Hello, my name's Judith Webster and I'm the Chief Executive of Music for Youth. I'd like to welcome you to the second of two sessions entitled Your Music, Your Voice. These are youth-led discussions about issues that they care about in relation to music, lockdown and mental health. I'd like to thank our colleagues at Lancashire Music Hub for setting this session up.
So thank you for taking time out of your day to join the Zoom call and participate in what we're doing today. And my name's Kieran, and Grace is helping me co-host today. And just a little bit about ourselves. I'm mainly a guitarist, bassist into slightly heavier music, but also like video game music and movie music. And yeah, been part of Amplify for a couple of years now, and shown me a lot of things that I didn't already know about the music industry. Grace, if
well, my name's Grace. I'm part of like brass in two brass bands, and I do a bit of like guitar and singing and that. And I've been in Amplify for about 2 years now, and yeah. So go on. Kieran's going to explain what Amplify is, just so you know.
So Amplify is a youth music hub board that take ideas from people around Lancashire and take it to a strategic level and try and present them to music clubs around the country to try and change music for the better, so then more people are included and can enjoy it more than there has been for the past couple years, as music's kind of seen a trend of dying out in schools and education facilities. Just say, first of all, thanks for filling out the survey. We've come up with 4 statements. We don't necessarily agree with the statements. We just decided to come up with them to start a conversation and basically get a reaction and get a discussion going between all of you guys. We'd like to try and keep it down to 10 minutes per statement, but if it goes over, that's fine.
So the first statement is, music is nice, but it's not essential to people's well-being, and listening and playing music doesn't impact on mental health.
I disagree. I think it is necessary, and it's a good way of like therapy to express how you feel, shape who you are really. Because people use music in different ways to like express how they're feeling, to help each other, and it also like brings us close together as like people.
Yeah, I totally agree with Reese as well, and that whilst music is something that it is like nice, it's also something that I couldn't imagine life without as well. It's not just kind of like a happy extra you can get. It's kind of the idea that like without it, there's all these things that you might think are necessary, like food and water and shelter and things like that, all these ideas that are necessary. But actually the idea that things like art and music and theatre and sport and culture like that is actually something that's it's like living. It's what life is, instead of just like surviving. It's actually living.
So my opinion on this is that, especially given the current situation, I've seen a lot of things that newspapers have put up about the essential workers and things like that. And I think that in the times that we are, music, arts in general has become a huge thing to people's mental well-being. So I think it is important, and it is nice to have, yes, but I think at this current time and through most people's normal life anyway, outside of this situation, is extremely important to mental health.
I'll play a little bit of devil's advocate. I don't agree with the statement, but just for debate and discussion, maybe this effect of sad music can cause people to go in a spiral and cause them to do things that wouldn't normally be in their behaviour, if you will. If the music wasn't so essential to them, so like sad songs, how they put you into a place of misery, that might take them to the next length, maybe. But me making it quite a bit damaging, taken away from the essential part to it.
to follow on from Kira's point as well, actually, I think that quite like from a personal aspect, writing music and like writing sad music and things like that is actually quite a nice way, for me at least, of actually getting some emotions down and kind of trying to understand them and work through them like that. So instead of just having this kind of like sadness that I've kind of got that is kind of like nameless and formless, it's an easy way for me, like writing a song, to put that emotion down and set it to melody and set it to chords and things like that as well. So actually I think that sad music, when you're writing it or listening to it as well, because you're hearing someone else go through maybe the same thing that you've been through, if it's like every song in the world is about heartbreak, isn't it? So like if you've been through heartbreak and you hear a song about heartbreak, maybe it'll help you get through that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think personal catharsis is a huge part of the way we connect with sad songs in a way. So I know that's just building on what you said, Kieran, but
yeah,
I think, hearing other people's experiences, and I think a lot of people and artists these days really try to challenge the norms of what we can talk about in music, especially, sort of gender perception and stuff like mental health on both sides of the gender spectrum and stuff like that. It's a huge thing that's, being talked about more nowadays. So I think that really connects with more people.
So I think music is like really important for mental health, not just music, like the arts as well, but we're from a music point of view, and it's really useful for like expressing yourself and sort of interacting with others, and it's like a basis to connect to others. So I think it's really important for mental health.
Yeah, I agree with everyone so far. Basically, I think it's really important for mental health. I know it's mentioned at the start that music in schools is increasingly becoming less of a thing, and I think that's definitely true. But I think with how kind of stressful exams and things like that are for people our age, I think being able to, like, things like the counting ensembles where you can have a group of friends away from school and something that's completely separate to your academics, where you can make friends but still be really productive and do really great things in a world where exams and academics are becoming ever more important. I think that's really, really beneficial for mental health, and I know that I personally have found that over the last few years, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. I agree there, yeah.
Music, even if you're non-musical, it's infinitely relatable because there's so many different types of so many different types of genres of music, exploring different emotions, and yeah, it's infinitely relatable. Even if you're not musical, you don't play an instrument, and I think with more exposure to music, even if you are non-musical, in schools, that would probably be very beneficial as well. So yeah, that's what I think.
Following on from what Zach and Aaron both said as well, actually that kind of ability to communicate with someone that you like otherwise might not have met or would be otherwise unable to communicate with. Like, music is almost another way. It's like almost another language. It's another way of communicating with people and getting ideas across. And like everyone's been saying about how music education is going down in schools and becoming seen as less essential in schools. And actually that, when that's happening, it's kind of taking the ability away from people to be able to express themselves through music and things like that, because they're not learning about it in schools and the curriculum. So they don't ever have the opportunity to learn how to express themselves through like a song, to be at risk of sounding a bit musical there, but like they can't. It's a whole new language. It's a whole new way of communicating and hearing other people communicate to you. And when you're not taught that, or taught that that's not important, I think that's really damaging.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think we got most points across there. A lot of stuff said, yeah, I definitely agree with. Probably one of the things probably not mentioned, like music working together. Also, I think that's good on your mental health as well, like becoming a part of a team and that, because sometimes on your own, that's where the mental health comes from. And especially like bands and all different stuff like that, it's definitely good on your well-being and essential in that way, if you think about it. So I'll let Kieran do the next question.
Right, so we've touched on it a little bit, but the statement is anyone can access musical opportunities and education if they choose to, regardless of their background or how much money they've got, and all genres and styles of music are equally accessible.
I don't think that's entirely true, because things like instrument lessons, they can be really expensive, and depending on like what instrument it is, but like for me, tenor saxophones, they will be a lot more expensive than say a flute or a clarinet. And also, like, depending on what county you live in, maybe they don't have a music service that can provide opportunities and provide instruments and stuff. So I think that, like, yes, you can probably listen to all sorts of music, but the actual opportunity to be able to get into them and to learn an instrument is actually quite limited sometimes, and that should be something that should be expanded in, because I think it's really important that everyone should have the opportunity to learn an instrument.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of schools now are cutting their education scheme where they do like lessons and everything. So it's much harder to get that opportunity now.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's really expensive to play an instrument, and it's unfair for those that don't have the money to like start to get into it. So they'll never actually end up getting the opportunities to play instruments like sax or clarinet and flute, and then that's sort of just cut off from them.
We're in a weird position nowadays where there are so many resources available for free online, say with YouTube, and just sort of with sheet music, you can just find things online quite easily, and ways to be even taught theory. But the problem is accessing instruments, and especially like in the classical world, like things are being harder and harder to get into because of A, the sort of perception, and two, the sort of the price of lessons and instruments. Because say if somebody wanted to learn piano, yes, there's 1,000 resources out there, but getting access to one or finding somewhere is really hard without education supporting that, I feel.
The only thing I'd add to the online resources as well is, like, if you're teaching yourself, I have a weird technique for the guitar where I don't actually use a pick, I just use my thumb, but I bend my hand in a really weird angle, and it's caused me problems ever since. And not having a teacher, because I'm self-taught, to say don't learn it like that has caused many problems down the line, and that's also another problem students might run into if they're going to learn an instrument.
Yeah, absolutely. And even if it is something like guitar, right, where you can probably find one for like 10 quid, like garage sale somewhere, right? Even if it is something like that, it actually, to even have the want or the like even want to do that, you need inspiration, don't you? You need some kind of authority figure encouraging you, and it is difficult. And maybe to have the time to practice something, to be like good at a musical instrument, it doesn't just happen. You need to have the time to practice, which means you need to have spare time and an environment where you feel like you can practice. If you've never got any time to yourself, or if you're always working, or you're always like in an unsafe environment where you don't feel like you can practice a musical instrument, it'd be really, really difficult to do that. So if you are someone that's like is maybe at home, it's not like you don't feel like you can practice the guitar in the living room, right? Then it's kind of like it's way more difficult than for someone who can just like show their parents or something like that.
With things like music being cut in schools, if you don't come from a musical family and you don't ever see those figures, people who are musicians and have that inspiration in the first place to be able to carry on playing, then people just aren't going to do it. It takes a lot of drive in the first place, but if that isn't sustained by seeing people who really love music and have a lot to offer to music because it's being cut in so many places, then that's really going to limit musical opportunities. So I think that shows that music needs to be continued in school so people have these inspirational figures to look up to.
Yeah, I agree. I think having an inspirational figure is very important, because I think quite a lot of people who don't have a musical background, I think they view learning instruments and playing an instrument, at least from the start, as a bit of a faff, because you've got to buy the instrument, you've got to pay for lessons, you've got to dedicate a lot of time towards it, and you might not actually be getting anything out of it for the first 6 months to a year. But to have this inspirational figure, like a teacher or somebody that, I don't know, some of you aspire even on YouTube or whatever, being able to see somebody doing that and be able to aim for that, it gives some drive.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in terms of background, I never sort of really studied music throughout high school, but I eventually changed to doing it at university, having no sort of background in it. As that standpoint, I find it sort of quite hard to get into certain aspects of like jazz, particularly like not having any background in it. I think a lot of people nowadays are getting more and more into stuff like that, and there's a real passion for it, especially like with younger generations and things like that. But I think without any sort of introduction to it, it's not really well represented. There's a sort of a general perception still in education that it is just classical and that's it. Whereas I think there are some measures that could be put in place to make things a bit more broad, or change the perception at least of how unbroad it is. That's what I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I've experienced that colleges are taking it out of the curriculum. My final year, we were meant to do a recital where we had to change a song from an original style into a different style, and we were told specifically you can't change it into jazz. There was only one loophole, which was to do it in a postmodern jukebox style, which was the closest you could get to jazz, which is sad to see because jazz is prevalent in many areas of music. It's one of the main reasons music has evolved to where it is today.
Yeah, kind of following on what people have said as well, just on the all music equally accessible. It's kind of hard to be a really, really good big band player if you don't have a big band to play with. You know what I mean? You can't. It's certain like solo instruments that you can get really, really good at playing by yourself. But if you don't have the like access to a big band or a jazz band or any of these kind of orchestras, it's really, really difficult to practice being in an orchestra.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I know at both of the jazz orchestras, because I was in the school and now I'm in the youth, we really struggled with finding pianists, because if you look at like the ABRSM grades, they're so focused on classical, and people learn how to become classical pianists, but they never learn how to become jazz pianists. So they come to the jazz orchestras and go into big bands as well, and they've got to kind of relearn how to play piano because it's never taught. So I definitely agree that some genres are massively underrepresented. I need more people to get into them and more teaching in it, and perhaps even changes in the syllabus for the grades, because it prepares people for one very specific type of music and others are left completely in the dark, really.
Yeah. Going back to what Harry was saying about like if you don't have a orchestra in your town to like play with, I feel like a big part of learning an instrument is to be able to play with other people, to have that like sense of community. And I feel like when I joined like the band that I'm in at the moment, it's really like made my playing come on. I don't think I could have got to where I am now without having been in like a big community where everyone is like enthusiastic. Because if you're not from a background where people are enthusiastic about music, it's hard to self-motivate. And if you've got lots of people around you all who are interested in the same thing, it's a lot easier to practice and get good, like by being surrounded by everyone else and trying to match the same level that they're at.
Yeah, I agree with Charlotte that it's important that there's sort of already a community for you to join and to like aspire to be better for, and if that's not there, it's difficult to improve your own playing, but especially for like clarinet and stuff. But like, I assume it's easier for like guitar and piano because you can have smaller bands. But like, for like orchestral music and band music, it's really important to have that sort of foundry.
Yeah, I'm just going to build from what Elspeth and Jack were saying before. I think depending on your background, I think there's certain expectations when looking at instruments. So if somebody said, well, I want to learn the piano, the expectation might be that you learn classical piano. You don't even think about going into jazz or any other type. And I think that's important as well, depending on your background and your level of education in school, music-wise. I think the ability to I think the ability to recognise that an instrument can be used for a load of different things rather than just a particular genre.
I also think it's quite important if you're playing like in a band. I found, for example, that since I joined the bands, it also not only does it improve your playing, but being around everybody else and playing in front of other people, it boosts your confidence so much. Like, not only boosting your playing, but your ability to play in front of people. I found that helps so much, and I've improved in that aspect as well. Not only, yeah.
Yeah, just one sort of thing to sum up based on what everyone else has said, really. As I never really had any sort of classical training going into a university environment, I didn't know anything about theory at all. And I never experienced the sort of classical training, so it didn't really help me at all going into anything like that. But it was only like through the way jazz was taught and jazz theory and harmony that I was able to get into anything like that and play in a big band setting. Like, you know, it's quite as applicable to guitar as it is to other instruments, about playing in those environments that you understand how everything works as a part of it, really. So I don't think that's really shown, especially with guitar. There's sort of a general perception of like guitarists as, you know, rock or indie or whatever. But I don't think most guitarists really learn the basics of theory because they find it very alien, I think. And it can be the same for a lot of people that are self-taught, but I think there's not really as much representation offered to different routes, especially in education. But yeah, that sums up what I wanted to say on it.
Yeah, definitely. Has anyone got anything else to add to that, or no? Okay, we'll probably move on to the next question. So, lockdown has been an amazing time to develop my skills and create music. I've had the access to all the equipment and resources I need. What's your opinion on that? Obviously, because that's now.
The lockdown has let me develop my skills. I agree with that, but it's also limited to what I can do because my band is planning to record during the spring summer period, and because of lockdown and social distancing, we're not able to do that. We've had to do a lot of stuff online. It's been very awkward, and I've also not been able to, because I don't play solo. I play with a band, so it's also kind of limited what I can do to develop my band skills and playing in front of a crowd and build my confidence up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
coming at it from the other side of that, I'm someone who plays it's kind of like me and a guitar. So actually, from the other side of that, I've had time to write a lot more songs and practice playing guitar and practice singing on my own. And because I've obviously we've had nothing but time for the last 3 months, so I've had days where I can just write songs and not have to do anything else. And secondly, as well, it's given me I've learned a lot of new skills. So if I've wanted to record something, I've had to download some kind of software onto my computer and then work with it from there. So I've learnt new ways of doing things that maybe I wouldn't have been able to do if it wasn't for lockdown and us having all the time.
Yeah, I mean, what Harry was saying is, I think that's very true. But as somebody who plays in a lot of bands, the common denominator with me improving musically is playing with people, and the lack of opportunities over the last few months, because of obviously the current climate, I can't do much about it, but it hasn't allowed for any of that any of that growth to continue, and it is difficult as well, because even if, because we're exploring these sort of virtual band rehearsals now, and recording and merging audio tracks to create a song essentially as a band, even that doesn't compare to actually having a band rehearsal with all of your peers, because it's the sense of being in a team, like we said earlier.
Yeah, I agree with Zach. Lots of virtual orchestras happening, but it's not quite the same as being able to actually rehearse together and play together. And I think, I know for me and a lot of my friends who are in the band, we've really lost out on the social side of it as well, because usually, we see each other every week or things like that, and we've really missed that, and the kind of confidence and things that come from that. Although we trying to have rehearsals, and I've even had some lessons via Zoom, it's just not the same as being in real life. So I think it's created the opportunity for practice, but a lot of the things that we're very used to have suffered really, really badly.
Yeah, definitely. I did my first online rehearsal this weekend, and that wasn't amazing. And especially going to university next year and not being able to go to band anymore, it's quite sad not to get that experience anymore, that interaction. Yeah, go on, Jack.
Yeah, sorry, I wasn't sure you wanted to speak first. I've experienced both sides of the argument quite viscerally the past couple of months, because whilst lockdown has been a sort of source of inspiration for like musical material, like having time to practice and write and things like that, doing work or trying to work on my band stuff or record my album has been completely blown out of the water. It's gone. Like the week that the university I'm at shut, I was set to record my album with a string section. I had jazz horn players coming, like visiting to come play and stuff like that, and create this sort of soundscape I wanted, but I had to basically wipe all that away and just do it all from home, which in a sense is kind of interesting because it creates a lot of resourcefulness in people in how they find collaborations during this time, finding people that have microphones to record on stuff and just access to software and things like that. So it's quite hard really as a creator to realize what you want, but it's also really hard as a performer to find people to work with and to be able to play to the standard you have been used to or rehearse and things like that. That's my experience, and I've talked to a lot of people and they're finding similar difficulties but also strengths in having more time to play but nobody to do it with. Really, it's quite difficult.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. I was practicing singing on my EP that was meant to be part of my coursework, and that's all fallen through, and I feel like I've regressed, but I've also had time to sit back and write and learn new things like most people have during lockdown. Right, we'll jump to the final statement then, if no one else. Everything with music will go back to how it was before the coronavirus crisis by the end of the year. So like festivals, education, bands,
I don't really think that it will. I know obviously it's like very far away from what we're doing, but I know a lot of West End shows have said that they won't be going back until at least the beginning of next year. So all of those musicians, I know stuff that I was supposed to be doing early next year has already been cancelled. I think there's just so many question marks that we've got no way to say that anything's going to be able to go back to normal. And I think potentially if it's been shown that people can record effectively from home and on their own, that maybe music's going to change completely, because if there's not a need to get people together for some things, then maybe not as much of that will be happening in the future.
Like a follow-up question, that is the new way of like music now online and everything, is everyone happy with that, or would they prefer it to go back? Because there's a new music of how it's done now, but is that how you prefer it, or would you like rather it go back the way it was? Because obviously it might not.
I think there's very few people who think that what is going on now is a good thing, and that it should be like this for forever. Because there's nothing quite like live music, live rehearsals, and live shows. So while it's probably going to take a while to repair itself again, because the whole essence of gathering a lot of people together in a relatively cramped space is far from ideal at the minute, I think eventually it will go back to where it was before, because nobody says, well, this is brilliant. I like not being able to see anybody, and you know, it's not going to stay like this forever.
Hopefully not. Yeah, probably not. Has anyone else got anything else to add to that? Yeah.
Yeah, just following on from Zach's point as well, kind of the idea that it might be some time, but actually I think people will have come out of lockdown and stuff like that with, whether it's like new songs or stuff like that, or they've been practicing more, or they've got new ideas, or they've had time to think about what kind of music they want to be playing. Any of these kind of things, I think whatever music looks like after lockdown, it will be different, but realistically it's not like none of us are ever going to go to a gig again or something like that, or a festival. Like some things will stay the same, but I think there will be differences. And whether it's just like people have more experience with home recording, and then there's more things coming out of home recordings, which I think would be really nice. It'd be like there'd be more independent music artists coming out and things like that. And I know people who've just been like putting things on Facebook and YouTube and stuff like that, just stuff that they've literally recorded with their phone or their laptop. And they've never done that before lockdown, but they've had the time and they've been practicing and they've written stuff and they've been like, this is something I'm actually really proud of, and shared it. Which maybe after lockdown we could see like a whole like new growth of home recording musicians. I think that'd be really fun.
I agree with Zach and Harry. I don't know about everyone else, but I think for me, I think coming out of it, I'm going to be even more excited to go back into it, even more keen to go back into it. So I think that music might even grow afterwards. Once things start to go back to normal, I can see things starting to grow more, because everyone's going to have had so much time to improve, so much time to produce new things, and just get excited about what we've missed over this time. So I really think that hopefully things will be even better than when we went into lockdown eventually.
Yeah, that was literally what I was going to say. Just like everyone is just at home doing nothing, and I think we're going to all appreciate it, because like towards when lockdown happened, at the end everyone was just like tired of school and everyone was busy, and everyone was like, oh yeah, right, okay, we need to do this. And now I think we've been at home, everyone's had a rest, like we're all going to be like more enthused than we were before, and everyone's going to be like really excited to start like learning new things and seeing people again and going to things. And yeah, I think it's going to be quite a positive change after lockdown.
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard for, especially economically, for venues, theatres and various places where everything is performed to recover and get back on their feet. after lockdown is lifted, I think it's going to be brilliant. Like the musical boom is going to be fantastic when people get back together and create these things. It's going to be wonderful, but it's going to be quite hard at first for things to get back working again. I think the record industry and just the live music industry has been brought to its knees by the current situation, and that's going to take a little bit longer than I think people are thinking that it's going to take to get back to normal. I know that education as well, especially like university education, things are going to be done online up until maybe even next summer. I think I heard that Oxford and Cambridge are saying that they don't even want to do face-to-face classes till next summer, and that's a huge impact on the way music is done because everything is collaborative all the time. So I think it's going to take a while, and I think it's going to be hard, but I think people are going to really work for it more because we've been through this and we want to get back and we want to get more creative because we've had this time to like really appreciate it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, has anyone else got anything to add to that? No. Well, that's it then. That's all the questions. So thank you for taking part. I know it's not been the most exciting discussion, but thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm going to pass you to Kath now. So.
Yeah, thanks Grace and thanks Kieran. I think I'm going to disagree with Grace actually, especially that last question has given me quite a lot of hope because it's, you know, as I work for the music service and the music hub, and it's just really hard. It's really hard to know when things are going to start to get back to normal, and I think it has made us value what we had all the more, that it's sort of been taken away suddenly from like underneath us, and it's yeah, it's really, really nice to hear how enthused people are about getting back and finding a way back as well. So yeah, it's been a really interesting discussion. I've really enjoyed listening to you all. So thank you all for your time. Thanks Grace and Kieran. Rachel, do you want to say anything?
I think you've said it all really. I would agree. I thought really interesting discussion, and I totally agree. Whilst it's been a time where we've all been able to learn new skills and experience new technologies and new ways of making music, that social aspect of making music together and enjoying music together is something that I'm sure we'll all look forward to being able to do and to engage with as soon as we can.
I've got some work to do. I've got some work to do.